Global oil markets were butchered in January as higher prices at the start of the year gave way to pressure points. Anxiety over the impact of new sanctions on Russia and Iran, with fears of potential supply disruptions, triggered an upswing in prices in early January. Market sentiments quickly shift to renewed concerns over the world's economy amid emerging trade wars and its impact on the pace of oil demand growth. Following the 8 billion barrels rally to a 5-month high in early January. Brent crude futures fell back to around $75 per barrel as international trade tensions escalated. According to the IEA, oil market reports global oil demand growth this year has been revised marginally, following the slight downgrade of 2024. Let's talk more about this. Of course, not just the crude oil market, but of course how it affects Nigeria's economy directly. The head natural resources and climate governance at Budget Nigeria, Mr. Enebi Okpaluwa. Thank you so much, Mr. Okpaluwa. It's good to have you on the program this Monday afternoon.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, let's start with Mr. Trump and what's been happening in that space and how it affects the oil market. I don't know how concerned you are, or should I say how worried you are about some of his moves. Many say United States is not really Nigeria's major buyer of crude as it used to be. But all the same, when there is this move by the United States, every country has to tighten its belt. So what do you make of this, particularly with the impact on pricing?
All right. So President Trump has been very busy, I think, in the last 20 days or so since he took office. But like he said, America First policy, that is his agenda, and he has released, he has released some executive orders to that effect, many of which are across various sectors and partly focused on the energy sector. According to Trump, his focus is to ensure energy security for the United States of America, which is his responsibility as president anyway. But be that as it may, people are right, and Nigeria's trading partners, so if you look at how much we trade with the US regarding crude oil, is really low. However, that doesn't mean there won't be an impact, specifically on price. So it could sway in either direction. Trump has demonstrated support for increased crude oil production in the US. And that means that would affect global oil supply. When there is a lot of supply, it means that prices will drop. And that is not really good news for oil producing countries. Yes, we like to produce more, but we like to produce more and sell at a high price. Presently, estimates have put the average crude oil price for this year around $74 per barrel on average. That already indicates perhaps some challenges for the Nigerian 2025 budget, which was pegged at $75 per barrel. So at least for the proposed budget. These are certain issues. Definitely there will be impact regarding supply. If there's a supply glut, then that will spell a problem for the country, because in that situation, crude oil price will fall. If we could reverse some 8 years ago, the last supply glut around 2016, 2017, crude oil prices fell to around $50 per barrel, which was really not an unpleasant situation for Nigeria. Oil producing countries felt the heat. Even in the US, they felt the heat. So, like I said, it's dicey. A lot of additional production in the United States is attributed to shale oil. Shale oil is more expensive to produce than conventional oil and gas resources. At around $50 or so, anything less than that, shale oil becomes unprofitable. And in 2017, some shale oil fields had to close down because of the supply glut. And that was what spurred the development of OPEC plus Russia, just to rein in supply to stabilize prices. As of now, investors across the world favor high prices, at least above the $70 per barrel. So investors are a bit skeptical to increase production if that will mean so prices will drop. So like I said, it could swing in another direction. Everybody's watching how things unfold. Nigeria should also watch. If production increases across the world and prices drop, then we need to look for a different way to fund our budget. Definitely is something of concern for Nigeria, and we definitely should watch that space.
Let's take it a step further and look at what is happening down here where budgeting, of course, we know that Nigeria's budget, a high portion of it is coming from the sale of crude, and there's a projection already for the year. If this happens and there's a drop or there's a glut, like we said, and there's a drop in price, it will affect Nigeria. The only option we have is to ramp up production if we can improve production. Just last week, there was a forum where we had the likes of MD Seplat, organized by the Harris Energies Group, where they talked about improving production. And the minister says above 2 million barrels per day looks like something that is achievable. Do you think that is really possible, considering what we faced before now with oil theft and, of course, other issues surrounding our oil market, distorting the oil market in this country?
2 million barrels per day is not new for Nigeria. Let me first put that out.
Good.
Before COVID, we were doing 2 million barrels plus. 2016, 2014, we were doing more than that. We've hit 2.2 million barrels per day if you check the last decade or the last 15 years. So it's not, within the last decade years, we've done about 2 million barrels per day. So it's not new for Nigeria. Just after COVID, we just found it difficult to return to that level. That's one aspect. Secondly, Nigeria is part of OPEC, and we have an OPEC quota to abide by. Currently, or at the last meeting, Nigeria's OPEC quota still lies at 1.5 million barrels per day, at least for crude oil production. As of the last reports by the NEPRC, we've done about 1.45 or so. So we are almost reaching our OPEC quota benchmarks already, the cap. Now, if Nigeria is to go above 1.5 million barrels per day, that would be tricky. And when you put that forward to our policy or our government officials, they tell you that, no, we are still sticking to OPEC quota, but the excess, the remaining 500,000 barrels per day or 600,000 barrels is going to come from condensates, right? So that's the idea, say condensates. But the kind of production we do in Nigeria, you cannot produce condensates without producing the major crude oil, and condensates account for like 20% of our production. So it might be difficult for Nigeria to hit 2 million barrels per day without breaching our OPEC cap. But it will be interesting to see how that happens. If there's a way we can expand condensate production without increasing crude oil, then fine. Well, that would be a tricky space to navigate regarding how we want to increase production to 2 million barrels per day without breaching our OPEC. Unless OPEC increase our cap, which I feel will not be the case, considering that we are trying to keep oil prices high enough for it to be profitable. Bear in mind that Nigeria's cost of production has increased. So our cost of production now, at least based on the last press release by the last reports attributed to the NEPRC, is around $40 per barrel for offshore fields and $25 per barrel for onshore fields. Onshore fields are having less investments. Not only local or indigenous oil companies are investing there, the IOCs are trying to divest from onshore fields and going offshore. Shell has done that as well. We are aware of the divestment news as well, and that is going all over the place. So let's say we are benchmarking around $40 per barrel. That means that window of profit is shrinking. If the price drops, our room for profit drops as well. We have competitors across the world. Saudi Arabia is doing $10 per barrel, which is very, very competitive, right? So we cannot afford a situation where prices drop. So it is a tricky space. I'm still interested to see how the federal government will navigate that target. I think it's achievable if we are serious of the country, if we do the right things, put all measures in place to curb oil theft. I think it is easily achievable for Nigeria. The issue is if we want to do it and if we can navigate the agreements that we have around OPEC quotas.
Let me follow up with asking you if you think that Nigeria is still that country that everyone might or would want to invest in with regards to the oil and gas space. We've seen some executive orders being signed before now, trying to, of course, attract more investment into that sector. We've seen that drive, the Bonga deal that came up, I think, late last year. Everyone commended that. So do you think that Nigeria is still that country where everyone would want to come into, at least to bring in the dollars, so that we can have more investment in the sector?
In terms of oil and gas production, so a lot of oil and gas investment, several factors are at play here, both local and international. Locally, looks at our fiscal policies. Are they competitive enough? Are they attractive enough for investors? That's one aspect. Look at security. Is our business environment secure enough for businesses to invest in? Can oil and gas production staff work in Nigeria? Can expatriates work in Nigeria safely? These are things that we have to consider locally and are probably within our control. But we also have other things that are not within our control in terms of the overall climate for investment. Up until Trump, there has been this drive to decarbonize the global economy, decarbonize global energy consumption, and so climate change, energy transition, and all of that. So investment into oil and gas has been dwindling. There was actually what we call a transition premium or transition risk, which had come into new investments. So any new investor will calculate the amount of years left for your product to be relevant and see if they can recoup their profits in that time frame vis-a-vis the amount of capital they have to invest in your country to produce that product. So these are, for now, I think the overall business climate or oil and gas climate, Trump has favored oil and gas production, but people are still watching. Is there still a premium for climate change, or is there still a risk? If I put my money, can I recoup my investments in 10 years? If Trump lives in 4 years, what's going to happen? If the Democrats come back, will they reverse everything Trump has done? So a lot of things come into play here. So people are still skeptical. People are still watching the space. Yes, for now, investment looks like it will bright. Maybe in the short term, we might get a few more investment. And if Nigeria can handle things around stability, economic stability, fiscal stability, insecurity, you curb that, then we can attract investment, and not just in the oil and gas sector, in various other sectors, in minerals production, in other areas of investment in the country. We can do that if we handle our issues locally. Then we have to look at what the global climate is talking about, and if investors are willing to overlook those hurdles to invest in the country. But for what Nigeria can do, yes, handle your local issues, attract investors as much as possible. However, I think globally we are still looking at energy space to see if Trump's drive is powerful enough to make everybody ignore the climate change risk, which is quite evident. If you look left, look right, there are signs in the weather. The heat is increasing. If you're in Lagos, you're in Abuja, you can sense this. Sea levels are rising. So it will be difficult to ignore the facts that climate change is real. And I don't know how investors will let's see how it goes.
Well, let's come back home. And of course, this sad incident of tanker accidents that we've seen in recent times, claiming lives and property, is something that we should touch on because as Nigerians, you know, it's affecting even affecting the image of the entire industry. Now, the NMDPRA have come up with a law, or should I say, you know, after lots of deliberations with concerned parties, an agreement that tankers loading above 60,000 liters of products should not be allowed to load at the depots. They said by mid-year or towards second, third quarter, 45,000 liters of tankers will not also be allowed to load. Now, it's a two-in-one question. Some will say, is this really the solution to this problem? That's number one. Some say, if our depots are working, these challenges might not be there. Some say we need to fix our pipelines to address this challenge. Now, where do we go from here? You understand this better than I do. Mine is to ask the questions. Can you just tell us what you make of all of this?
I would say the three questions you raised are quite valid. Everybody should, these are questions that are valid. Is that the solution? If our depots were working, would we need tankers? Maybe how should we fix our pipeline? Yeah, we can do all three. But I'm interested in what stimulated the decision of the NMDPRA to ban crude oil tankers. Me, I'm a researcher. I'm a data person. I look at evidence. So when this came up, I tried to understand. Yes, sadly, lives have been lost, property have been damaged. The disaster is sad. This is not to be insensitive, but what is the data saying regarding the extent of tanker accidents? Tanker accidents across the country account for less than 2% of road accidents. In as much as they are very devastating, it accounts for less than 2% of road accidents. All right. Now, what is the policy? Are they trying to reduce or eliminate road accidents? That is, I don't know if taking tankers off the roads might completely solve that. And if you look at the data, at least from the National Bureau of Statistics, one of the major causes of road accidents is overspeeding. And then before you now look at other things like brake failure, defective vehicle parts or bad vehicles, substandard vehicles. So I'm trying to still see how the data still speaks to the decision of the NPR. I believe they probably had a reason for doing that. What they said was they are trying to reduce road accidents from tankers. If a $6,000 liters of a tanker doesn't get an accident, but what is to say that a 30,000 liter tanker will have an accident if the cause is the road? In the same report, they said the cause of road accident was bad road. So if it's the road that's a problem, then I don't know if banning tankers is the issue. However, this discussion has been had several times before. Lagos had at some point put a schedule for heavy-duty vehicles to enter the city. So I think there was time from 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. That was the only time allowed for heavy-duty vehicles to enter the city of Lagos to reduce issues like traffic and also accident. So there are different ways to go about this. The issue is to stop accidents, then perhaps we should speak to the data, or perhaps do the much more difficult assignment, which has to do with ensuring that the tankers that ply our roads are standard, are safe, that the vehicles are not faulty or are not damaged. If you look at some tankers plying our roads, you wonder why this vehicle is still on the road in the first place. All right, we have more accidents from trailers. That accounts for 6% of total accidents across the country. The trailers that go to the ports. That is one. If you look at the distribution of accidents across the country, we have more accidents in cities like Kaduna tops the chart, followed by Ogun State. Whereas the tanker ports are Lagos, Port Harcourt. So we are trying to find the correlation between why, to what extent would the banning. Of course, that is one aspect. We also look at it from the commercial aspect, where in as much as we have tankers that are causing accidents, they are also investments. These are people's businesses. And I think the association has come up to appeal that this should be reviewed with much more tact, which I think is their right to say. A lot of people depend on that stream of production of activity to feed their families, which is equally valid. However, safety issues, perhaps we should do the much more difficult things and enforce standards, vehicular standards, road safety standards, and improve our infrastructure across the country. And if you are going to phase out oil tankers from our roads, then perhaps there should be another policy where you now phase in infrastructure. Are you going to improve pipeline infrastructure that will compensate for the volume that will leave the road? Because if you say 60,000 liters tankers will no longer apply the road, in 6 months, an investor might decide to get 2 more tankers, 30,000, and you are increasing traffic, right? So you need to, what is the point? What are we trying to achieve? I think they need to be much more clear, and that will guide the decision that we are going to make regarding whether this tanker should see. Definitely, we should improve pipeline. I think that's the best way to go. That will not be done in 6 months. It takes a lot of investment. 6 months can't solve that. But it's something that we ought to have thought of before and phase gradually implement. If you are taking tankers off the road, that means there is a supply gap you are creating. You have to compensate for that, whether through pipelines or whichever other means.
Mr. Nebi Okpaluwa, it's always interesting talking to you, particularly when it has to do with this oil and gas industry. Thanks so much for the breakdown. Ahead, Natural Resources and Climate Governance Budget Foundation. Do enjoy your week.
Thank you very much.